Good evening. Good evening to you, Mr. Kevin Smith, and good evening to all of the technical and management team at Kaieteur Radio. Good evening, viewers and listeners. Good evening, of course, to our guest for tonight, Mr. Freddie Kissoon, who, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, let me just share this with you without even asking for a comment from Leonard or Freddie. Leonard has been very, very ungracious. He has promised Freddie a nice smartphone to set up his computer and whatnot to get Freddie online so that we could see him. But Leonard, I think, he expected an appointment in the cabinet and he didn't do anything. And today we are seeing the true person Leonard is. Anyway, we're gonna get to that just now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. And let me say a special welcome to you all on this memorable, I would say, memorable day in the history of Guyana. We have seen today the government announce its cabinet, well, a majority of the members of its cabinet and of its seats in the National Assembly. We have, of course, seen the names. We all have our opinions about those names, and we will be having a discussion tonight with Mr. Freddie Kissoon on his thoughts and opinions of what went down since Declaration Day to now, and of course his opinion on the cabinet appointments, among other factors of discussion tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also remind each and every one of you that we have a number of reactions already coming out from various sectors of society, both civil and political sections of society. We have seen, those of you who would have not, there is a release from APNU AFC and their comment on the appointments, the cabinet of ministerial appointments and so forth. And I must say it is not unflattering. You will have to determine how true or not it is. And if one were to ignore the first paragraph of APNU AFC media release, the rest of it would probably be their reaction to ministerial appointment per se. However, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Mr. Leonard Gildarie would have been carrying on with his elections. Well, it's what's the name of your new show, Leonard Gildarie?
You have to listen to what I have to say now, and that is Wake Up Guyana. You hearing it?
Great. Good. So he has been the host of that, and I know that a lot of persons would have been calling in onto that program. But let us get on with our discussions tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to place some boxing gloves into the hands of my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, tonight. And I certainly hope that our good friend, Mr. Freddie Kissoon, has had his gloves on, provided by Glenn Lal. Because I am going to, Freddie, Leonard says he wants to have a swing at you first. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Freddie, a couple of weeks back, you said that you would eat your shorts if these people come out of office, if the coalition is out of office. Your comments, please.
Well, you have an imagination larger than the three Guyanese rivers. I never talk about eating anything. The only thing I eat in my life is breakfast, dinner, and lunch. My wife cooked for me for the past 41 years. I did say that they had no intentions of coming out, but you have to. But one has to understand how the dialectics change social movement. In every event over a protracted period, circumstances are shaped by invisible forces, and they are unforeseen permutations and connotations that come into play. I believe that the PNC and the AFC intend to hold on indefinitely, hoping that the international society would have brokered an agreement. But I believe when that coming to the end of July, when the international actors, international organizations and government took a more stringent position with the second tranche of visa abrogation, certain circumstances intervened, which meant that they had now to rethink their strategy. The strategy up to the end of July was to hope for a negotiation with the the West, but particularly the Americans. I think the OAS and the Commonwealth would have allowed the Americans to take charge of it. The Americans probably would have gone that way, but CARICOM, these are things we will never know about unless someone writes a memoir. One of perhaps the second biggest stumbling block in keeping the PNC in power, people would be surprised, was CARICOM. CARICOM leaders were afraid of any interim arrangement, any power sharing arrangement, because that direction would have given a blank check to other CARICOM parties to rig an election and stay in power. And they were very, very much afraid of that. Remember, Motley won an election in which the opposition lost all the seats. Probably they were thinking, what happened if you have an unpopular government that would lose all its seats, and then it rig the election and stay in power? So I would continue to embrace my thesis that they were not set to come out until they hoped for some bargaining arrangement. But forces intervene. Now, I'm quite willing to discuss what I think were those two circumstances that undermine the indefiniteness of staying in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Freddie, thank you for that. In terms of, let us cast our mind across the region, because as you know, in a week's time, there's going to be general elections in Trinidad. I think, well, it's on next Monday, there will be elections in Trinidad. What would be your thoughts towards this election? Because Rowley himself has appeared to be somewhat, or coming over somewhat as almost bullish in his approach to the country. But on the other side, one is still speaking about the monumental missteps of his opponent in this political cycle. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on the regional thing, if you can, if you don't mind, Freddie, and then we come right back to the Guyana election.
Well, one of the great misconceptions in Caribbean politics and Caribbean sociology the past 80 years, more than that, is Trinidad is a replica of Guyana. It's not. There are serious departures in the sociological and cultural shape of Trinidad. And that is why Trinidad have been having change of governments all the time. There are some marginal seats. Remember, Trinidad doesn't have proportional representation. Trinidad has the first past the post system, or what we call the constituency system, or the plurality system. And there are some marginal seats in which voters are not ideologically fixed like Guyana. So in Trinidad, you can easily squeak in with a 1-seat or a 2-seat majority, despite the resemblance of the ethnic makeup. But the ethnic makeup is not a replica of Guyana. That kind of endemic, morbid, inherent ethnic suspicion that Guyana has, it's not reproduced in Trinidad. Now, a number of reasons explain that. You got to go back historically and see where the ethnic communities worked in which occupation, etc. It's not like Guyana where the Indians had the business, the Indians were more rural-based, the Africans were in the public service. No, Trinidad may have had that shape, but not to the extent of Guyana. Secondly, there have been cultural institutions that do not alienate the ethnic communities as we have in Guyana. From the time Burnham government invented matrimony, Indians have not participated in it. For the 23 years of the PPP's rule, an overt Indian party, that government was unable to get Indians to participate in matrimony. There may have been schools with Indians, with classes of Hindu children performing, etc., but not at a very substantial level. I remember Dr. Leslie Ramsamy saying to me personally that the government tried its best to get 200 Indians to join the police force. They were all set, everything, and they didn't turn up. Now, Carnival does not alienate ethnic communities in Trinidad. You would be surprised if you go in Trinidad to see the type of gyration, the type of ethnic mixing in Carnival that you do not find in matrimony here. So I am giving this output in the context of what went on in Guyana in terms of elections, and I cannot see any concerted effort to rig any election. You may have unsavory rhetoric. I think Rowley has accused the opposition leader of elevating the rhetoric of a racial thing. But what happened with Guyana sends an immensely strong signal in the CARICOM region that CARICOM would not tolerate a rigged election. And this Trinidad election is coming so close to Guyana that, for me, I don't think there is any conspiracy about doing what the PNC and the AFC did in Guyana.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will get, I'm looking towards us putting together a panel that can discuss Trinidad elections someday very, very soon, within the next couple of days, Freddie. When I manage to put that panel together, I'll certainly be in touch with you to see whether you could join us as well, because the regional politics is, of course, extremely interesting. Freddie, let's come back to the local things that happen, especially today. Today, we have seen a number of cabinet appointments. And, before pointing out any particular name, what is Freddie Kissoon's sense of what transpired today with these cabinet and ministerial appointments, sir?
Well, number one is that I will approach this cabinet generation of cabinet ministers using the Hoyt thesis. I think Mr. Hoyt is a study in enigmatic politics. Prior to becoming president, Mr. Hoyt was virtually an appendage of Forbes Burnham. Mr. Hoyt did the unthinkable. His two daughters were killed in a car accident. If my cat or my dog die, I will be so devastated I don't want to come out of my bedroom. And Mr. Hoyt Tuchewin died in a car crash, and Burnham asked him to go up to Linden and address a public rally. And he did it. So that goes to show his emotional and philosophical commitment to Burnham, one of the most demonic leaders the Third World produced. But when Hoyt changed, when Hoyt got into power, you had, to use Burnham's phrase, an attitudinal metamorphosis. Hoyt went into some serious iconoclastic revisionist directions. He was prepared to employ prominent secretaries that had no political affiliation. He was prepared to listen and to complaints against the most senior state officers and discipline them. So you had this road to Damascus symptom with Desmond Hoyt. And I believe you have to give this new dispensation a chance. The one thing that I raised my eyebrow is that at the moment you have 23 cabinet ministers. I thought they would have cut that down and merge a number of ministries, like Ministry of Labor, Youth and Sports. But given what went on the past 5 months and the unprecedented courage shown by the 10 opposition parties and the PPP's hierarchy, I guess they wanted to show a gratitude to those people that, I mean, after all, a minister job is a prestigious job and it has a lot of implications, right? people come to you for redress and you can help them. So I guess they said, look, I mean, we should patronize our courageous corps that stood 5 months of brutalization by APNU, AFC, and their surrogates. And it was, in fact, an intense period of brutalization. I would say this to Leonard and you, Yog. I don't know where you guys were in the 70s, but I was very much alive and a university student in the 70s. And I lived through Burnhamism, and I lived through the 1985 rigging of the elections by Hunt. But what went on the past 5 months, I have never seen a parallel like that. It was punctuated by dangerous asininities, pathological outbursts of the worst form of racism, incitement to people to commit acts of violence, and most of all, what we didn't have in the 70s and 80s, we had a major Latin American military power that wants to claim 2/3 majority of our land. And we went through 5 months of this trouble that could have easily generated a Venezuelan invasion. So when your party goes through those kinds of things, I would think you would want to reward the valorous ones. And the 23 cabinet ministers maybe is something that they thought that they should use as a symbolic gesture to the country and to their people.
Well, 23 is not enough as yet as well, right? Because you still have to have finance and maybe some other portfolios that would have had to be appointed.
Well, I think it's only finance, and Mahadeo will probably look at that. I cannot see Mahadeo being a vice president without having some substantial input in economic direction. That is forte. That is what he wants. And he may very well be the interim finance minister. But if you have 23 and you still have more, then you may exceed the APNU AFC number because they have 25. But this country is such a troubled nation and there's so much to be done that let's hope the numbers are not important, but the performance is. I think it is morally right for each one of us as citizens to give these 23 people a chance to perform. When they fail, then they'll be failing Guyana. But as it stands right now, I'm being interviewed here, I have nothing negative to say.
Right. But do you think, just to ask you a follow-up there, do you think that when they fail, if they fail, Guyanese government has not shown any interest in replacing and reshuffling people actively? Do you think if they fail, any one of them, they would be hauled over the coals, so to speak?
You have to bear up with me. I will have to offer an analysis now of that will take more than a minute or two. The problem with this country, the tragic, sad problem with this country is that our political culture has not changed since the split with Burnham and Jagan. What happens then is you have a vultured culture where the two parties close in and become very supportive of their own. And they live with a paranoia that if we excoriate, if we punish one of our own, would dominoes be falling? Would we be given the opposition and the society, measure and latitude to criticize the party? So what happens then is that this political culture cements an incestuous culture. I mean, the very, very graphic example is Mahadeo. Mr. Mahadeo came to power as the youngest member of the Western Hemisphere, 36 or something like that. Mr. Mahadeo was in napkins when our naked political culture was overrunning Guyana. He probably never even saw Burnham or Jagan in action in the 60s. And when this new, fresh guy came, he became a normal PPP guy doing PPP things, and there was no change. And you know why? Because when these young people get into the parties, the older folks, beat them into submission. I'll give you an example. We Guyanese and we scholars go all over the world when we have an interest in Guyana. And wherever we are, we write about the PNC, PPP. Dr. Alicia Trotz and Arif Bulkan, the law lecturer in Barbados. And then there's a guy from London School of Economics, Mahadeo. They wrote a couple pieces the other day, and everything is PNC, PPP, PNC. But if you look at what the WPA and the AFC turned out to be, they have produced more politically depraved leaders than the PNC and the PPP. And you know why? Because in each of these parties, there is an elitist group, and this elitist group makes sure the younger ones fall in line. So you had at the top of the WPA all these professors and doctors. You had in the AFC all these rich middle class guys, these lawyers and doctors, just like WPA. And they force the young ones to comply. I'll give you an example. When the AFC got into power and they began to do stupidness, of course, I took them up in my columns. And Ramjatan said in an interview with Christopher Ram, Freddie Kisu like he wants to bring back the PNC with them things he writing. And days after and weeks after, people that I campaigned with the AFC, young people, would meet me and say, man, Freddie, like you want to bring back the PNC. You hear what the leader said, man? So one has to hope most desperately that these young people that are now ministers, and they deserve their position, but you hope that the older ones do not take them by the scruff of their neck and say, hey, be careful with what you read in Kaieteur News. Be careful what you read in Starbuck News. You know who's at the door? The PNC wolves are at the door. Remember what those people did for 5 months? And these young people who's supposed to be visionary and supposed to change Guyana, they tend to become fearful of being berated by the older leaders. One hopes that what happened to Mahadeo doesn't happen to this new set that's in the government right now. Because I've met some of them in the radio program Gildarie and I had when this nonsense started, and they are quite impressive. But we always have to be careful of the devouring old political culture of this country, not the old political culture of the PNC and the PPP. Those two parties express it graphically, but the old political culture that has destroyed the WPA and has now destroyed the AFC.
Yes, Freddie, thank you very much for that. And I want to ask you today, 19 persons, and I want to ask you if it is your opinion that any government that is, any leader that is choosing a cabinet, whether qualifications should surface or play a role in that decision-making process.
No, you cannot say that generally. You have to say that selectively. You have to have a lawyer to be the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. That's a specialized position. You do not need to have a degree in agriculture to understand agriculture if you live in agriculture areas your whole life and you understand agriculture by coming up into it. That was one of the complaints the lawyer Charandas Prasad had of the AFC. Charandas grew up in Kanji, knew about agriculture, but the APNU, AFC refused to have a junior minister of agriculture. I think you have to identify the areas. There are some areas where people grew up grounded in the community and they understand the community. And in a ministry like social cohesion, you really don't have to get a PhD. But let me quickly stop and say, I plan to write and ask the government to cut out this nonsense, stop this stupid renaming of ministries that the previous government did. There is no such thing as public security. From earliest times in civilization, the state was concerned with security. So it has to be national security. It cannot be public security. We grew up knowing public works. The Americans have a term, JIVAS. Some JIVAS changed the name to public infrastructure. Public works is so simple. You have something called public health. It's supposed to be the Ministry of Health. The state is responsible for the totality of security, for the totality of the nation's health. It has to be Ministry of Health, not public health. The private hospital comes under the legal jurisdiction of the state. So to get back to your question, no, I don't think you need qualifications to be a minister. I think you need integrity, I think you need vision, and you need very, very phenomenal experience. And if you have that, hats off to you.
Yes, thank you. And Jörg, if you may permit me as a host, if maybe some people who would have missed it today, let us tell you the persons who would have been sworn in. It's Zulfikar Mustafa, Minister of Agriculture; Pauline Sukai, Minister of Amerindian Affairs; Charles Ramson, Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport; Priya Manikchand, Minister of Education; Hugh Todd, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation; Dr. Frank Anthony, Minister of Health; Robertson Ben, Minister of Home Affairs; Colin Crowell, Minister of Housing and Water; Susan Rodriguez, Minister of Housing and Water; Dr. Vindhya Prasad, that would be Minister of Human Services and Social Security; Joseph Hamilton, Minister of Labour; Nigel Darmlal, Minister of Local Government; Anand Prasad, Minister within the Ministry of Local Government; Vikram Bharat, Ministry of Natural Resources; Kwame McCoy, Minister within the Office of the Prime Minister; Sonia Parag, this is Minister of Public Service; Juan Edgel, Minister of Public Works; Deodat Indar, Minister of within the Ministry of Public Works. My first question to you, Yog, Anand Prasad. This is a television owner. Any objections here? Any comments?
Freddie?
Well, you have to give these people a chance to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Why would one just say right away, look, Kwame McCoy was charged for assaulting me. In the court, documents were tabled of confessions by his acolytes that they were involved in assaulting me. I cannot use the assault Kwame of me to say the PPP must not have him along. The PPP have to judge Kwame by what he has done for the PPP. What they have to tell Kwame is that you cannot be like that anymore. You have to change. Now, I don't think McCoy pass is something that to gloss over. McCoy has a very, very sordid past. And you're talking to someone that McCoy, I believe, was guilty of criminally assaulting me. My country comes before any individual. I have to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that my vote, after all, and hundreds of thousands of other people were counted because we fought for that. It's the PPP to use the judgment and respect the nation by the people they put. Now, it's quite possible Kwame McCoy may change, but we have to bear in mind that he has a sordid past. And when he was charged with 3 others for assaulting me, the magistrate, when it came to bail, the magistrate asked me what I thought, and I said I don't think they should be remanded. I believe people should be given their freedom and they should be given bail. I remember discussing that with Leonard, and I believe that. I don't believe he should have been remanded. So I have nothing against Anand Prasad. My thing would have been Kwame because he was a bad boy. But it's quite possible he may very well change and reach out to people and do things to people. So let us not condemn at immediately, but see how they perform.
No, we're
For
not
me,
asking, we're not condemning. What we're just asking is
okay.
the
Well,
choices.
yes, I can see that. You're not
Because
asking.
one of them that I look at it and say, wow, I didn't expect, like, we were bowled over with somebody that we didn't even know about before. Forgive me for that, for putting it that way. Onij Waldron, I think the daughter of I think this former guy that was involved in forestry there, but she is now the minister of tourism. Interesting choice. And then you have I think the one that would have raised a little eyebrows. Well, not that Vikram happens to be the headmaster of a school that my kid went to, but Vikram Barrett goes through the Ministry of Natural Resources. Interesting. Comes from a background that is basically in another field. But I just wanted to raise those kind of things. Maybe
I,
if
I,
anything stuck out at you like a
I,
sore thumb.
I think there may be things going on inside parties that we do not know. I don't know what Ms. Waldron brought to bear to the PPP, but you cannot deny the fact that it is a historical and political fact around the world that when parties win power, they automatically um, elevate some people that have personal connections. In this respect, Obama was no exception. A lot of people got diplomatic posts because they were Obama friends and because they helped, they give donations. I don't think any serious analyst, if he's worth his academic training, he or she, would deny that in the dispensation when government changes, there aren't personal favors dished out. The criteria to be used is performance. I I I don't think the Ministry of Tourism deserves a ministry now. I do not have at my fingertips, but speaking to you, the level of income tourism brings in, what are its prospects, what have you. I believe there are ministries in which it could be subsumed, but if the government thinks they need a Ministry of Tourism, then one hopes it justifies its budget. But Guyana is not like the rest of the Caribbean islands. We have a different kind of tourism, and I don't know how much that brings in to the economy. But I'm not an expert in that.
My last question to you before I go back to my very gracious host, dear Freddie, or two. I want to make a comment, which is I think a lot of people were commenting on the age, the youthfulness of this cabinet. I think 75% of them are basically new faces as well. But I want to ask you also if you believe that there may have been, or if you believe that there should have been persons there that you're not seeing, and who are those persons?
If I believe there should be, well, I am not. To ask that question, one has to be familiar with the internal mechanisms and the company activities, for want of a better word, I should say, party activities of the PPP. I don't know those people very well. I don't know what went on in the PPP the past 5 years, who were elevated, who worked behind the scenes. In terms of people not being there, some of the names, one name would be like Clement Rohi. He is a long-standing PPP person, but I don't think he should have been a minister. I think he had his time. I don't think he is the kind of person that gels with West Indian society. His name come up, but I wouldn't think he should have been there. who should not, who aren't there and should be there. I'm not familiar with the list of 65 candidates. I'm not familiar with the PPP's. I know there's a guy called Dharam Siraj who was for a long time the head of the RPA. My dealings with him tells me, and I've known him a long time before the PPP got into power, and all through the years when the PPP were in power. I think he is a fairly good person when it comes to understanding agriculture, and he has a good personality that gels with what Guyanese would. His name comes up to me, and I know he was a candidate. I can't think of others. What you can do is give me those names, and if I know them, I will comment right away.
But Freddie, you are right. I mean, a lot of persons have have commented. I've received myself a lot of inbox messages as well that, what happened to Siraj? Why isn't Siraj the agriculture minister? So the question I think that is coming over is that of the list of 65, would a number of persons be left out purely on a matter of a loyalty basis? With all these large party scenario, you have a number of persons that has to always be subservient to the maximum leader, and so if some persons are not, then they would be sidelined. What would be your response to that, sir?
Well, in any selection of representative in cabinet or parliament, we have to take into consideration the brutal reality of the ethnic mix of Guyana. One of the great activists of this country lost his activism and migrated because of the ethnic compulsion involved in selecting cabinet and candidates, and that is Gerhard Ramsarup. Gerhard was left out as a parliamentarian for the AFC because when you look at the equation of you need to get Amerindians, so they had to go with Garidalo. You need to have a certain amount of male and female, blacks and Indians. Gerhard gets left out. So I would think that some names that are put there in the cabinet and in parliament would be put there for ethnic reasons. So if you have some people left out, that would be because of the need to have a quota of Africans in an overtly Indian party, a set of mixed race people, a quota of Chinese and Amerindians that make up our thing. So the Amerindian ministry always go to Amerindian person. But as we're there now, one of the names that I was surprised at, she was a student of mine a long, long time ago. She has been a minister for a very long time in Amerindian affairs, and I thought it would have been best to nurture a new Amerindian leader. Now, I'm not making any comments against the lady's character, though I did know she was in a controversy by the amount of money she spent on her dental thing when she was a minister. But I would think she has been around a very long time. Now, I suspect she was given back the portfolio of Amerindian affairs, which she had since in the 90s, because when they look at the results, they probably saw that she performed. Remember, in this election, in things like the Amerindian areas, if you have an Amerindian candidate and you assign them to area 1, 2, 3, 4, and you win area 1, 2, 3, 4, you have to be grateful and reward the person. So I think her name, I looked at it and raised my eyebrow because she's there a long time, and we need to start generating new leaders around the place. I mean, for example, Schumann came and won a seat. So people will be left out because of the compulsion to make the thing representative of gender and the ethnic mix.
So, Freddie, you mentioned the joiner list. Let's spend a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, sir. Let's talk about what prospects. Do you see that, given the numbers, I mean, the PVP has a majority, no two ways about it. Do you see that Lennox Schumann, our good friend, would be able, or, those who would follow him in that joiner, would they be able to make an impact in Guyanese politics under the current dispensation?
Unless the PPP is prepared to reach out. Look, I am going to put on my academic hat here and speak quite frankly. What has happened in this country has given the PPP enormous, and I have to look for another word, maybe prodigious, maybe colossal, maybe gargantuan. And even those words, even those adjectives are not sufficient. But what has happened the past 5 months has given the PPP a tsunamic advantage in this country, in that they now would have quite a penetrating sympathy from the nation. People would say, look what these people been through, look what happened, they saved us. I mean, there's no question about it. Someone like Anil Nandalal was, and Mahadeo were the face of the PPP's resistance. They, in typical World War II language, they were the resistance. So those people's standing would be enormous. And it's not going to be easy to get people to criticize them or get people to be alienated from them, because the PPP has a priceless weapon to stay in power. You want to go back to what happened, you see what happened, and I think the PNC has self-destruct, and the PNC has given the PPP permanent victory, because people are going to say, and I am telling you something, given my age and all that I've seen, I was very, very afraid of what Guyana was going, where Guyana was going with that 5-month horror. So I am not too sure what kind of scope, unless the PPP is generous and wants to reach out and bring about profound transformation in this country. I'm not sure that one seat of the John Slate could do much except appeal morally to the nation's conscience.
Correct. Thank you, Freddie. In terms of the opposition now, Freddie, what would be your thoughts with regards to who might possibly take the helm of the combined opposition, the coalition?
It's a sad, sad commentary on a historic party like the PNC. If you look at Corbyn's era, there were only 3 persons that were likely to lead the PNC after Corbyn went. And that was Carl Greenidge, who was out for 20-something years, Faith Harding, who was out for 20-something years. And Corbyn said to himself, they can't come back and lead this party. And he had no one. And so he made an arrangement with a reluctant politician who knew absolutely nothing about politics. And so he became the president. And when he became the president, the PNC continued to scrape the barrel. Walter Lawrence self-destruct. No one in the PNC and in the PNC constituency think Basil Williams could or should be president. Harman became Hamilton Green Jr. Nobody, no PNC constituency or the society think Greenidge would be a good minister. So there you have it. Now, with this 5-month debauchery and with this 5-month self-destruction, it is anyone's guess who's likely to succeed Granger, and those who are likely to succeed him will not bring any credibility to the PNC. It's either going to be Lawrence, Basil Williams, or Harman. And all 3 of them are very tainted individuals, very tainted. What Harman did the past 5 months, he has no, there's no reason for him to for this country to accept him as the opposition leader. That's Hamilton Green Jr., and there's no place for anyone in Guyana with the mentality of Hamilton Green. Basil Williams has destroyed himself. As AG, he was the worst AG we've ever had. He's not a credible politician. Valda Lawrence will alienate all the Indian people in this country with what... So who you have?
Right.
And then look who is coming up. Look who will vie for leadership, and even if they don't win, try to be in the hierarchy. Simona Booms and James Bond. The future of the PNC is very, very much in doubt.
And I want to
Right.
break in here, Yoga. There's a statement coming out there, I presume, from the Ministry of the Presidency or the Office of the President. Dr. President Irfan Ali has appointed a special technical team, Kit Nascimento, Christopher Ram, Attorney at Law Nigel Hines, Seth Narayan Singh, to conduct a rapid financial and management assessment of the following agencies: GPL, GWI, GGMC, CHMPA, GFC, this is Guyana Forestry Commission, Guyana Gold Board, NISIL, Lands and Surveys, Guyana Energy Agency, Rice Board, Oil Company, the Guyana National Shipping Corporation, Go Invest, Gaisuko. They will conduct the review of the operations, policies, and programs of the Department of the Public Information. Yog, you had another one for the propaganda or something like that. The National Communications Network, the Guyana National Newspapers. The team will further address the matter of the functions of the Guyana Broadcasting Authority, National Broadcasting Authority. So they've been given wide-ranging thing over state institutions. Maybe a comment?
Mhm.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, because
I will immediately contact them and suggest Leonard Gildarie for editor of the Chronicle.
okay, you would
How
you
about
would
that?
you would do that.
Yeah, you
Could
want
I
me to do
recommend?
that? I have Kit Nascimento's cell number. He's been calling me the past.
I'm going to send it to your smartphone that you have there. Go ahead.
Which smartphone? The one that
So,
Lowenfield gave me? I threw that away.
Go ahead,
but
Freddie.
but did you mean Nigel Hines, the accountant, or Nigel Hughes, the attorney at law? Because you said
Nigel
Nigel
Hines.
Hines, attorney at law.
Nigel Hines. This
Yeah,
is
he's an accountant. He's the deputy
Right.
leader of Badel's party.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Well, I think they made. I think it's Christopher Ram. What they have is the way it was written. It's chartered accountant and
Okay.
attorney at law, and Mr. Nigel Hines, certified public accountant, and of
Yeah.
course, Cesar
Good.
Ryan Singh is going to be there as well.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we have that. That's good. And let's see what they would come up in terms of the review. You would recall that the PNC, well, up to the coalition, they did some bit of review of a lot of these agencies immediately upon taking office. I remember Chris Ram and other companies, they did audits of a few of these agencies. So might it be a similar thing to kind of showcase, look what we've taken over from, and then it's going to go again into the dark, dreary corners of stories. Freddie?
It 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 could go that way because this government is going to be so hard pressed with the devastation of the economy by COVID. I mean, what they may be doing is looking for things that you see. This government is going to need a set a set of facts to keep its image alive and to justify itself based on the nonsense that the PNC AFC did. Now, one of the ways of doing that is to keep showing the society what the previous government did, and they may have some kind of evidence that these things, were not solidly put together, and they may want to. Let me stop there and say I think that's basic politics that the PPP government is playing, and you find it all over the world. When a new dispensation comes in, it has to show the nation, look the mess we inherited. And why they have
Right.
to do that is because it does two things simultaneously. It justifies their role, even though they have a legal mandate to rule. They need a moral mandate. And secondly, it keeps the opposition on the back foot. Um,
Right.
that is going to be important because given the state that the PNC is in, if they find more skullduggery in these areas, it makes the PNC even hard to stay alive,
Right.
and the
Now,
and
Freddie,
and the
here,
AFC
here is
too.
here is a big problem this country has, one of the many. The fact you rightly pointed out earlier, the fact that the PNC has performed so poorly that people are going to forget their first year or two and always are going to remember their last year since the no confidence motion to when they reluctantly gave up power after the declaration. And the fact that that happened, the fact as you pointed out that the PPP may very well have a very long reign in office because of that horrible performance. Now, in terms of the independent media, Fred, on one hand, the independent media, let's say Kaieteur News may well realize that, you know what, if we criticize them, if we come out swinging against them, what will it do? What will it accomplish? Because you don't have a respectable opposition, and the PPP might very well feel, well, hey, there's nothing you can say that can do anything to us. So that's one paradigm. And the second one, Freddie, is, excuse me, of course, from the paradigm of what should the Kaieteur Newses of the world do then, of Guyana do then? Should the PPP be under the microscope from day one as an independent media person yourself, sir?
I think you have to, given the unprecedented nature of what occurred for 5 months. I mean, there have been military dictatorships, there have been questionable elections in other parts of the world. Even in Belarus, I think, or Azerbaijan, one of those former Soviet republics, there have been crazy things with elections. But the 5 month thing in Guyana is unprecedented and unusual, phenomenally negative. And that kind of thing is not going to be easy to sustain constant criticism of the government because you're not going to get an embrace from the population. The population just wants to get on with its life, and it's going to be hard to sustain a journalism of critique. Now, the media, knowing the media, I think they will do their job. They will say, we can't allow this, we shouldn't allow this. But most of all, they may feel that they have a moral obligation to expose the government so the government can do better. And for that reason, given that hope they have, that if they use the journalism of independence, the government may, back down on things they're doing. I want to believe that given what happened to the PPP in 2011 and 2015, now, if the PPP didn't do the things that, if the PPP didn't think they were so omnipotent and invincible, and they were more humble and used power more modestly, I believe quite fantastically they would have won the 2011 election and the 2015 election. It's just that a pomposity and unbelievable arrogance crept into them after winning so many elections, 92, 97, 2001, that this invincibility erased rationality, and they began to do psychotic things, semi-fascist things, with the complete knowledge that these things would not affect us. We are the invincible party in Guyana. I want to feel that there's going to be serious reflections on the part of a number of them that if we go this way, we get into trouble. Now, there is an unpredictable aspect of human nature. we may think that they may not get into trouble in 2025.
Hmm.
They may very well get into trouble in 2025, not to the point of losing elections, but to the point where they, people will be so disgusted and people may lose respect, although they may win the elections. So
Right.
I think the media, with those kinds of thinking, the media will feel that it has to do its job. On the other hand, I think what will aid the media in pursuing the independent part is that you're not going to have a rapacious opposition. The AFC is dead, the WPA is dead, and you're going to have a very weakened opposition. So it could go either way. You can have
Here,
an
here,
unprecedented arrogance on the part of the PPP government, or you can have the PPP saying that since we have no opposition to wake up in the night to use the knives against us, let us be good guys. So
so
it could
Freddie,
go either way.
let's take that point a little bit further for the sake of discussion and argument and public consumption. Now, given that there will be the respectability factor of an opposition is almost zero. Given that the media can easily see itself, as you rightly pointed out, filling the role of almost being what an opposition could be. But there will now be serious repercussions, going to your earlier point, from the public, who may now say, well, you're against this PPPC government, we're going to boycott you. So remember, Kaieteur News was under serious stress of being boycotted just 3 short months ago. If it continues along the trend that it has been, it might very well come to that. Because remember, one thing that the PPP has done in its own history, like the PNC, has been to use state media to its maximum and to really, really create a lot of mouthpieces for itself, so that the PPP might feel, well, we don't need Kaieteur News and Stabrook News to be in existence. Your take, Freddie.
The difference with the Bharat Ramata regime and this one is the immense international goodwill that greeted it on its assumption to power, and the immense protection the international community gave it during the past 5 months. We had a different CARICOM. We had a CARICOM that was proactive. We had a situation in the world where Guyana and the PPP were given maximum understanding of what was going on. If they go the wrong way, I think they should very well be careful of the strength of that international force. This is one of the most obscure countries in the world. This country has no importance in terms of world trade. In fact, CARICOM put together has occupy less than 2% of world trade. If this government goes the wrong way and it disappoints international community and it disappoints very, very important governments, those governments will feel personally betrayed, and it could have repercussions. I think the PPP government will be looking at that. But my hope is that philosophically there is an inherent tendency, and I emphasize the word inherent, there is an inherent tendency for Homo sapiens to do bad and to do good. And you can't dismiss Homo sapiens as a hopeless cause. I think there are still good people in this world that have kept civilization going. I think there are people that will stand up in front of a gun to save their dog and to save their pet. And they are good people. And people are likely to change. Do not dismiss the innate, infinite capacity of people to do good. There may be 1 and 2 recalcitrant recidivists in the PPP leadership, but they may very well turn out to be the newer ones may very well turn out to be the visionaries and may want to join in a glorious covenant with the Guyanese people.
Right. So I wanted to, just to extrapolate that further. The following two questions, Freddie. If an election, let us just hypothetically, if an general election was to be held in Guyana now, do you think APNO AFC, the coalition, would end up with less votes than they had on March 2nd, 2020? That's one. And two, might it not be also a slippery slope for the PPP to ever want to ignore the fact that PNC still ended up close shave, just a 15,000 or one seat difference basically, but that the PNC still is a powerful party in the country?
Well, no, the dialectics have been working relentlessly. You cannot use that argument of the 31 seats as the essential criterion of judging the PNC. I think the 5 months of Draculian tentacles of the PNC, which was decapitated, have driven a fear so deep in the Guyanese people that they're going to be wary of the resuscitation of this party. If you have an election right now, I think the PPP is likely to win a 2/3 majority, with seats going to some young, vibrant people like the Leonard Schumann, the
Freddie Kisun.
I'm a big old man. That Timothy Jonas, the Dr. Asher Kisun, and people may say they have shown so much courage. Let's give them a chance. So I think you may actually have a devastation of the PNC. And one of the reasons for that devastation is that a lot of the PNC supporters, if there's an election, may not come out because those people, look, do you know why, even although they were exhausted for 5 months, do you know why they haven't been an emotional vortex emanating from them? They know and they knew that the PNC was lying to them. For example, after the Court of Appeal ruled in favor of the PPP, they didn't go to the CCJ. And people are no fools. People saying, Mama, why you... Look, the PPP went to the CCJ. Why they ain't gone to the CCJ? They got to fight this thing. People knew that they didn't go to the CCJ because they were bullshitting, and the CCJ would chase them. People knew that PNC constituencies knew that they were fooling them, and that is why you didn't have that emotional rush that David Hines, Mark Benchop, and the rest of them, Whitford Burke, Sherwood Duncan, those people were seriously calling for street demonstrations with the intention of disrupting the stability of Guyana. But it didn't happen because the 5 months was too long. The PNC constituencies had 5 months to see what the PNC was doing. So in the end, you had a small group of surrogates and Hamilton Green Jr., which is Joe Shilin or Lil Joe, and a few others pushing this incitement. But the 5 months had exhausted the PNC constituencies, and large amount of those people knew that they were conned, added to that, people were really turned off that you're lying to them, yet you got those people on the streets likely to get COVID. Hundreds of them didn't have on masks. Hundreds of them didn't keep their 6 feet distance. You could imagine people in their homes saying, watching the TV saying, why they have these people out there? All in all, I think that would lead to an electoral devastation if you have an election this year or next year.
Freddie, I want to ask you something. Do you believe that the Irfan Ali administration should make it a priority now in its early days to address this issue or to repair the ethnic damage to our society that would have taken place over the last 5 months?
I think they will have to do that. They will have to do that not from tomorrow, but from yesterday. The problem they have in doing that is they're going to try to create a formation which to engage, which to dialogue with, rather than the old serpentine people that rigged the elections for the past 5 months. So they're going to have serious mental problems reaching out to the PNC leadership. So what they probably will want to do is to get a representative group of PNC people who were not all that serpentine or who were not all that depraved to reach out to see if they could breach the ethnic divide. Now, there may be others apart from the surrogates and the rest of them, like Walter Lawrence and those people that were doing Joe Harmon. There may be others who were in the background and not doing such poisonous work. The PPP may want to reach out to those kinds of people. The name that comes up to my mind is Nigel Hughes. Hughes never did anything or said anything that would poison the atmosphere during the past 5 months. He could have done what others. Kit Nascimento called me 3 times 2 weeks ago. The last call was last week, and he said to me, I want you to know that one of the persons keeping this instability going is Stanley Ming. And he said to me, Stanley Ming is behind this thing. And Freddie, I know, because Stanley Ming me and Stanley Ming, me meaning him, Kit Nascimento, did the same thing in 97. We went to Hoyt and told Hoyt he won the election and he must not give up. Now I am not doing that, but Stanley continued to do that. And I'm sure with the closeness of Nascimento to the government now, he may pinpoint some of these people behind the scenes who were involved in the exacerbation of the ethnic conflict the past 5 months. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think from yesterday they will be seeking to reach out to people, but they're going to have a mental problem doing it with that kind of degenerate PNC leadership that we saw the past 5 months. So they may want to get some university lecturers, they may want to look at some lawyers and people like Nigel to want to talk to, but not that kind, not those hardliners in the PNC, in the AFC, not the people like Raphael Chotman, Cathy Hughes, David Patterson. No. How they go about doing that, I really don't know. How you invent a group of people to discuss ethnic reconciliation without going to the hardline PNC people, I don't know how you're going to do that. Maybe you two guys could advise them, or whoever advising them. That is going to be a tough job. I mentally will have a problem dealing with my past friends like David Hines. I will have a problem. I live in Guyana, and David was trying to destroy this country. I would have a problem dealing with some of those people. Take, for example, Ramjatan. I think I would have a problem sitting down and having any serious discussion about my country's future with Temraj.
So, Freddie, in terms of some of those names you called, do you feel that persons like a Raphael Trotman can bounce back into Guyanese political landscape the way he was probably pre-2015?
No. Raphael Trotman, Moses Nagamutu, and Temraj are virtually dead. I doubt whether they want to go back in politics. Raphael, that is where Nigel Hughes is a much more intelligent person than the rest of them. If you look at the past 5 months and the interviews Nigel Hughes gave, one of them, those interviews, the PNC and the AFC didn't like. He said, he told his interview, he said, look, they reached this problem they're in because after they won election, they behaved badly. They didn't even go back and meet their supporters. Raphael Trotman didn't do that. I think what this 5 months have done is to expose the moral bankruptcy, the deep moral emptiness of Raphael Trotman and Kemaj Ramjatan. And Trotman achieved enduring infamy when he said that, two things he said that charged your nerves, and you said, what this bloody fool is talking about. You can imagine at the level of human courtesy, you don't run down a country by saying it has a small population. One of our own, all two of you, Leonard has a son born in a small Caribbean island. My sister and brothers live in a small Caribbean island. I was an advisor to a small Caribbean government. I never thought about the word small. They're our people. We are Caribbean people. We are not Jamaicans, Trinidadians, or Guyanese. We have a Caribbean passport, and that fool could run down our brothers and sisters across the border and call them small people. What nonsense that guy was getting on with. The second thing he said, which made him look asinine, and the judiciary will probably think twice when they listen to his arguments in court. If I had an elephant, I would tell him not to take Raphael Trotman as a lawyer. This man told the whole world that the CEO has a report and it has to be accepted by the people and the election commissioners of Guyana. No one, no law can reject the CEO's report. You imagine the CEO, the chief election officer, was made into a god by Raphael Trotman. He could survive that kind of crude masturbation. No, I think Raphael Trotman, Moses Nagamutu, and Kemaj Ramjatan are dead and gone politically.
But one of the reasons why I raised the Raphael Trotman name, Freddie, Guyanese as a people we need to remember also, Trotman had the distinction of being the Speaker of the National Assembly. I mean, this gentleman would have been right on top of the political game, so to speak. But this last 5 months has seen a lot of people really
crumble. Can I cut you and tell you something about Trotman that you don't know? Do you know there were a group of people pushing the hardest line that we are not coming out? And do you know 3 of them were from the AFC? Now, surprisingly, Nagamutu and Ramjatan were not constantly part of that discussion, although they were obviously part of the mentality that we're not coming up. But the people who were carrying that hard line attachment to the PNC was Raphael Trotman, Cathy Hughes, and David Patterson. Those 3 people had merged into the Burnhamite, Hamilton Green mentality of the PNC, and they became indistinguishable. Ramjatan, of course, made himself a fool. He went and told the people goodbye. We lost the election, and election defeat is not a death sentence. And then the next day, like a clown, he said, "No, I didn't say that," when it was on tape. But the people carrying the fight and say, "This isn't ending. We ain't going nowhere." Trotman was one of them. I don't want to get into libel, but I risk my life. I don't want to get into libel, but I'll tell you this: Trotman is not. Trotman is. Let me show to put this without libel. I would put Trotman way down the list of politicians from the PNC and AFC that I have some appreciation for. Way down the list. Now, your readers can read what I'm trying to get at.
Would you take a
Understood.
position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Freddie?
If I would take a position,
In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
I have absolutely no interest in taking any
We
ministerial
just want to get
position.
that on record. Go
Now,
ahead.
I've been offered the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and I declined it.
Okay.
You want to put it on record too?
Because of how diplomatic you are?
Remember, I don't comb my hair, so I would be a terrible foreign minister.
Right. So Freddie, there's another dimension that I want to quickly raise before we get to the end of our program. Now, forget the ruling party at this moment, but let's put our minds onto Guyana, and given all that you would have said about the lack of trust, and it's going to take a long time and maybe some brand new faces to really get the political divide, as it were, not the racial divide, the political divide really working for the betterment of Guyana again. Now, does Freddie Kissoon and Yog and Leonard and everybody else, is there a way we can still continue to work to bring parties together, to start having discussions across the board, bring faces together that might have been maligned in the past, so that discussions can happen going forward rather than keep on rehashing the past? Your thoughts, sir?
I don't want to put forward names to people who I think have been destructive to my country. I wouldn't like someone to come up to me and tell me, Freddie, man, forget about what Kemraj has done. No, I have a young daughter in this country, and what went on for the past 5 months did not unaffected her. On the contrary, it had affected her very well. One of the things I always remember is the look in that young lady's eyes at the Massey supermarket when my wife and I were leaving, and she said to me, I live up the East Coast, and Mr. Kissoon, you think anything can happen? And I saw the fear in that young lady's eyes. But every day she was probably unhappy coming down and going to her work. It's going to be difficult. I have given in my column yesterday some names that I think the government can work with, who are not PNC or not PPP, but would work with this government and do good things for people. Two are African,
Leonard,
one is Portuguese.
your name? Leonard, did he mention your name?
No, he did not.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting old. I forgot Leonard Gildarie. I humbly apologize. I will talk to Kit Nascimento tomorrow. Leonard, do you want NCN or Chronicle?
You tried to set me up, right?
No, but I think we have to, you and I and Leonard, all of us, we have to, I don't want to be the one, and I will not be in any group, to recognize, to suggest these names of people who have brutalized us the past 5 months. I can imagine what Mahadeo and Sanjay Dattadane and those young people could say, them, if they had their way, would have happened, and they're right. I mean, what they carried us through should never happen. I think if the PNC wanted to rig this thing, I think they should have stopped Mingo, put the nation in silence, and the next morning, around the 6th or the 7th of March, they say we won this election. And I don't think that bitterness, that deep, penetrating bitterness we would have had now. But look at the incitement. Look at good people. That man, Owen Arthur, has died. And look what they did with his name. Whitford Bird said when he came as an observer, he lived at Mahadeo. Man, people don't deserve that kind of assault on their dignity. And you going to suggest names and say, let's work with these people? Yog and Leonard, my memory of Guyana only starts from the 70s. And when I saw what Guyana did to help fight for free and fair election and undermine Burnham, he became one of my icons. That has gone. No one can tell me now, Freddie, would you like to have a discussion with the UC and patch up or what? No. What went on the past? Listen, guys. Listen. The person who's listening to this radio program and those who are viewing it. Do you realize for Gildarie's children and my daughter and your little children, do you realize if we didn't come out of this, what we were facing, those kids, your kids were facing in 2035? The same party that was in power now would have been the party in 2025, 2035. They were not going to give up. We were saved, and it has nothing to do with Mahadeo. It has nothing to do with the PPP. And I would think for you, Mahadeo and Leonard Gildarie, it had nothing to do with the PPP. It has to do with our country that we live in. It has to do with our right to vote. It has to do with choosing the people we want.
Correct.
And that's
Indeed.
why
Indeed.
you know what
Freddie, we are getting to the end of our discussion tonight, but I want to ask you something about somebody I know that you have been on a show with. And you know, Freddie, you hurt me badly, man. You were on the show in face, in body, you know, and you were shouting with this guy and so forth, but you're not in face. I'm just teasing, Freddie.
you talk about Ben Chop? Let me tell you something. I lost my emotions when Ben Chop was going. I anticipated he was going to say something nefarious and derogatory about Bruce Golding. And I knew Bruce Golding is one of the persons who saved my country. And I was not going to allow him to tell me anything on that program about Bruce Golding. Right. And I don't care how much I raise my voice and my decibels. I was protecting my country, and I was protecting the image of a man who saved my country. So Ben Chop can go to hell, and I would do it again and offer no apologies to the world.
Well said. And indeed, one of the things that I want to raise here, Leonard, I found it passing strange that Mr. Burke, sometime yesterday or today, said that, you know, when he gives a press conference or when he does a live, he gets thousands and thousands of viewers. And when Ralph Gonzalez gives a live, it is a dozen or 2 dozen viewers. And I was tempted. I normally don't respond to these guys. I was tempted to respond, but that man is the chairman of CARICOM. What are you?
A 10th rate citizen in New York.
What was that, Freddie? Could you repeat that for me?
A 10th rate citizen in New York who does know the lower part of his body from the upper part.
I'm not sure what that really means.
I think so. You know, one thing, I don't care what they say about me. You know, I never care about that. I ain't going to lose any sleepless nights. If tomorrow we come and say Freddie's a criminally ugly, you don't call me here, I would lose a fraction of a moment of sleepless nights.
You need,
right.
You need to still get yourself a photo, Freddie.
Would you? I'll communicate with you after, because I want to have this discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow night we're gonna have Selwyn Peters and Charandas.
Wow, that's a big one.
Joining us from Canada, and hopefully 1 or 2 more persons will be joining us tomorrow night in room 592. And on Friday night, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have a discussion on Trinidadian politics. So far, we have gotten confirmation from Mr. Wesley Gibbons. Freddie, you would know Wesley. Excellent, well-respected journalist from Trinidad and Tobago. He'll be joining us, as well as Orin Gordon. I have asked Peter Wickham to join us, but I'm waiting for a confirmation there. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got a nice 2 days ahead of us. Freddie, I would like to...
I wouldn't want to be in that panel. I believe those people live and work in Trinidad and know Trinidad well. My thing would just be more generalized. I think when people give their views, it should be informed, and they should have specialist knowledge of that. If I'm part of that panel, I would give way most of the time to those people, because those people live and work in Trinidad. They know the nuances. They know the actors. So I will pass on that one, simply because I will be in a group of specialists, and I'm not one of those specialists. A man has got to know his limitations.
That's Clint Eastwood would have said that.
Thank you, Freddie. And ladies and gentlemen, we are at the bottom of our hour here, and we are going to wrap our show. And please know that tomorrow you can join Mr. Leonard Gildarie in Wake Up Guyana.
No, he should change that. No, wait. He didn't do his research. There was a PNC program on Channel 9 named Wake Up Guyana. Now, the guy can either sue him for copyright, But why you would want to copy that a PNC program?
I'm not
Wake Up
sure
Guyana.
you're talking chalk and cheese here, man. I say no further.
There was a PNC program named Wake Up Guyana.
Freddie,
Gildarie
you
came
need
to,
to come out to this past. You have your head buried in the sand. You need to get
you
up and
still
you need to.
haven't answered why you're copying that
I'm not
Channel
sure
9
about copy. You,
program.
you have your
The
head buried
Wake
in
Up,
the
it's
sand,
called, it
Freddie.
was either the Wake Up program or Wake Up Guyana. What's wrong with you, man?
You know,
Freddie, you see, Leonard Gildarie has learned well from the politicians. When he couldn't answer you, he came with a broadside, right?
Wake Up Guyana. You could call Guyana a rise, but don't copy the no PNC Channel 9 thing.
I'm not sure that is it.
Yes, there was a program with the name Wake Up
Freddie,
I
on
said
Channel
chalk
9.
and cheese. You know, you don't understand.
Go do the research. There was a
yeah,
program. Ask Mark Venture about Wickford Burke if there wasn't a program on that. Or that guy.
yes.
You know who used to do that program, that Wake Up thing? There is a guy on Channel 9. He was the MC in the inauguration of Granger, and he wore a towel around his neck in the inauguration. What's his name?
Basil Bradshaw.
Basil Bradshaw, that's the guy who, for the whole day, took a satirical column in which I said the Russian made 35,000 false masks and put it on Guyanese to vote. And he thought it was serious, and the whole morning he's saying, you see, Freddie discovered the rigging. That guy, I think, had a program with the name Wake Up.
I think it's a wake up show. I don't think it's Wake Up Guyana.
But why you want, well, the Wake Up Show and Wake Up Guyana is the Wake Up Show
They
anyway.
have other people named Freddie too, and nobody tell you to
Then you
change
cannot
it.
find something. But by the
Freddie.
way, you're my friend, so I could tell you, come with something more exciting than Wake Up Guyana.
Freddie,
You
let's
can put
leave,
people
let's
to
leave
sleep.
Mr. Gildarie.
You
Let's
can
leave
put
Mr.
people to
Gildarie.
sleep.
Let's leave Mr. Gildarie to his designs.
Wake
You know,
up, Gildarie,
you know,
wake up.
just so the man gonna want to tell you about what you're naming your column and stuff like that. So let's.
You can tell me, I don't care.
Leonard, you see,
Once
you
speak in the truth,
gave
I speak in
the
the
first.
truth.
Leonard, you see, you gave the first blow with your boxing gloves. Freddie has delivered an uppercut.
No,
So
that's
let
all
us
right.
let
That's all right. But he was dancing tonight, though. You asked him some questions. He said, I don't want to go. But that's okay. That's Freddie. Freddie always
that's
does
all right.
that.
Freddie, thank you so much for being here tonight. And Leonard, thank you so much, my co-host. And we'll certainly be seeing you. I'll be seeing you, Leonard, tomorrow evening with
He's waking up Diana tomorrow.
Freddie, thank you so much, and do give our regards to your family. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you here in room 592. Our thanks continue to go to Kaieteur Radio and the technical team working hard behind the scenes there. My co-host, I'll see you tomorrow evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to your company tomorrow evening in room 592, where we continue to unleash the truth. It's been a pleasure to have your company here tonight, along with Mr. Freddie Kissoon and my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. From wherever you've been joining us from, remember to do a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best place in this world. Ladies and gentlemen, do have a great night. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
COVID-19 tips sponsored by Deck Soap. 1. Practice social distancing. 2. Wear your mask when leaving the house. 3. Wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds using our Deck Soap. 4. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flex elbow when you cough or sneeze. Choose Deck Soap for that extra cleanliness. Deck Soap is affordable and available nationwide.
Kaieteur Radio.
Covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.